gameplay for me is just when, either from the player's perspective or from the developer's perspective, either one, something unexpected happens. So that might mean the developers specifically design things so that players feel like things are happening emergently, or it could be that things happen when the developers are in the process that they don't expect and things happen out of that.
Sometimes this even finds its way back into design of later games where they'll find ways to try to work it back into sort of future products or sequels. So my favorite example of this is the combo system in Street Fighter 2, where initially it wasn't intended to be implemented. They even acknowledged that they caught it was in there, that you could do like a series of hits that couldn't be stopped, but they didn't really acknowledge or make much of a deal of it. They assumed players wouldn't do it. They certainly did. And so then for the sequel, Super Street Fighter 2, they then implemented like a counter in-game that acknowledged the combo system and just made it a central part of the gameplay that since has held on for that genre.
Built 2 different iterations on the same idea. They're Trailblazers version 1 and version 2.
Which is a game that focuses on the authorial play aspect of emergent behavior.
Which is where one player defines an experience for other players through play. So we applied that to the racing genre and have one player who's the leader who's actually creating the track, and 3 other players are racing behind him trying to catch up to him. And once they catch him, then they become the leader who builds the track.
And the really good thing about that is that the person that's the trail builder is that they can be able to make the track with any sort of intention that they want. Whether they want to make a really, really difficult track for everyone else to go through, or if they want to make something that's just like really, really fun, like an insane roller coaster.
On 2 different gameplay prototypes for the Emergent gameplay group's Incubator. One was Space Race, a game where we had physics exploitation or mechanical manipulation, where basically the cars, there's a mismatch between how we think the physics are implemented and how they really are, that allows players to move in unnatural ways.
I worked on a game called Playground, which the whole point was to explore this part of emergent gameplay that we call world construction, which is when players get a chance to affect the environment. They can build things, change things, and overall just sort of change the space that they're playing in. So the whole point of the game is we went in and gave players a bunch of different tools to affect this really simple 2D block space. And then we kept making different versions of this game to try and see like what tools affected how players behaved. So at first it was really complicated and players could do all sorts of things. They could scale blocks or rotate them and push them around. And then we started simplifying and seeing, as we simplified, how players' behavior changed. An interesting thing is the simpler it became and sort of the more localized to the players it became, the more social behavior that sort of developed instead of players focusing on the environment itself. So that was a pretty cool development that came out of it.
For the next project, we worked on Telekinesis Dash, which is kind of a simplified single-player experience where the focus is on speed running, again from a mismatch of how we mentally assume the physics are implemented as opposed to how they actually are. In this case, there's tricks where you can kind of like find ways to slip through walls or build up much greater speed than you would assume by exploiting things like the air dash, exploiting the telekinesis system for unnatural kind of movements. And any favorite examples of emergent gameplay?
My favorite example would be in League of Legends, actually, which is in which people actually made a mode where it's not really like a classic MOBA game where there's like 5 versus 5 people and there's 3 lanes. But anyways, what people do is that they'll all pile into like one lane with random characters, and it's called like all random, all mid, and it gets like really, really hectic, and it's like a really fun game way to play. And eventually it got made into like an actual game mode.
I mean, I love the Hitman Absolution authorial play space. Players play through levels to create missions for other characters to then go through and play themselves. And what I love so much about it is how people take it and they produce narratives with it. So they go through and they play and they like take out a chef and then they take out like some other guy and they turn that into this like weird little story to try and like conceptualize it and contextualize it. So I just think that's really neat.
I really enjoyed custom game types in Halo, particularly Griffball. Griffball was invented by the Machinima series Red vs. Blue. It's sort of a capture the flag variant where there's one ball, everyone's trying to get to their opponent's goal. Everyone has swords and hammers, and it's sort of in an enclosed area created in Forge. And it's just sort of like this mad melee game type.